Welcome this evening or morning, depending on where you are, to Vegan Synergy Meditation meeting number 6. I'm Dharmendra Gordon, and we are going to start our process this evening by unplugging and letting go of and releasing any concerns you might have had coming into this meeting with the world you just left. As you enter this world of the Vegan Synergy Meditation here and now. So just allow yourself a sort of little mini bardo, as I like to call it, transition to get into your present physical, mental, and emotional space here and now. That isn't defined by anything but the room you're in right now. And Evan, can you mute? Thank you. So let's take a moment out of our inner silence to just sort of tune into ourselves right now. Tune into your body and just feel what your body feels like after going through this day. And check out your feelings, your emotions, and any sense of anything on an emotional level. And also any residual mental activity that might be going on. Just be aware of what that might be about. And we just acknowledge that that is all there. We have sensations in our body. We have emotional experiences moving through our nervous system. And we have mental imagery of various sorts and types carried through our brain cells. And as all that is occurring, just allow yourself to focus in on whatever it was that you went through today that you would like to give some love and attention to. That maybe as you went through your day and you experienced everything you had to experience and you perceived whatever you perceived and you manifested through your actions whatever you had to do, there was a place in you that you might have had to put aside or ignore or numb out or split off from. But whatever that place is right now that needs your attention and needs your energy and needs your love. In other words, the place that gave you the biggest challenge today, that brought up the biggest barriers or obstacles. Whatever that place is, just stop for a moment and look through your day and find it. And it's going to feel interesting. If you found the right thing, it's probably going to feel kind of uncomfortable or funky or misshapen. It's okay. You're going to take it now and embrace it with your heart. Just embrace that place, that funky little place that needs your love and attention. Just bring it into your heart space right now and embrace it fully with your total attention and your presence so that it's being held in your heart. And we're just going to allow that to remain like that as we shift now into a different intention while that remains being held in your heart. That issue of the day, that biggest issue of the day is held in your heart. It's suspended in the grace of your heart. And it's just going to remain there while we tune into the second intention, which is, what gift would you like to open up and share with the group this evening? And right now, I'm just going to ask you to just kind of give yourself some space to see yourself, to feel yourself, to hear yourself with that gift in this space tonight with everybody. a gift that gives something to everybody in the space, that is for the benefit of everybody in the space. Obviously, it benefits you because you're benefiting everybody in the space. And when you do so, you're benefiting. So what gift would you like to bring to the space tonight? What would make you feel really good? And as we connect with you in our hearts, when we get to that place where we're sharing our gifts, will make all of us feel really good. And as you feel that gift and you release it into your aura so that it literally becomes like a field, a fragrance released all around inside your aura. And just allow that fragrance to be there now as we move into the third intent of this little journey. So the question now is, as you open yourself to the whole of existence, and feel the interconnectedness with you to everything. So you're connected to all the animals and the living beings and the humans, the trees and the earth, and then beyond the earth into our solar system, and the sun, in our galaxy, and out into the universe. And you feel a sense of interconnectedness with everything. What state of higher consciousness would you like to call that? How would you, when you experience the interconnectedness of everything, how does it arise in your being? How do you experience that? This is something to simply just become aware of. When you settle into your interconnectedness of everything, where does it take you? And it helps if you're tuned into your belly and the movement of breathing down there in your lower belly. And if you're not breathing in your lower belly, just relax and breathe into your lower belly. And just feel your connection to everything through your belly. Through the center of our being is where we do feel actually and are in reality connected to everything. So as that connects into you, you can get a sense of how that is expressed and how you experience it. It is literally like an emanation, like a filament of light that's extended out from the center of everything that's connecting right now into your belly, into your being. And if you open to it, like a tractor beam, it can actually start slowly pulling you toward the center of everything. And as it does, it also enters into you. As you pass through it, it passes through you. And you can start to feel it fill you up with a certain quality. And if you don't have a name for it, that's okay too. And that name may come up later in the meeting or later in this little mini journey or later in your life somewhere. That's okay. But just allow that flow of the universal life force energy and its wisdom to just kind of course through your veins right now. So you embody it. You literally embody that quality. And maybe at a certain moment you can allow yourself to just feel at one, just for a moment, with everything. And that you can feel with your belly, with your heart, and with your mind all at once. Through your witnessing, through your ability to reflect upon yourself and your experience you're having right now. That's what witnessing is. You're just watching yourself, your whole process go on right now. Specifically as a sense of at one-ment with everything. And if there's a sense of infinity or never-endingness, Just allow yourself to enjoy that. Where anything and everything is possible. And now we're just going to allow our heart to guide us back to the place we started from, through becoming aware of the gift and its fragrance that's completely filled up your aura. That's how you'll find your way back to you in your body. And take your time. We're not in a rush. You can also just enjoy the spaciousness for a little while longer if you so choose. And as we tune back into our heart, we also remember the little issue we left there that we are embracing. And as this expanded space starts to coalesce directly into that issue that we're holding in the center of our heart with attention and presence, it's going to become a jewel. And you can enjoy just seeing when that happens, what kind of a jewel it becomes. It's a magical jewel. It can assume any form, shape, size, color, geometry, pattern, whatever you like. But that's what happens when you're connected with everything and you bring something into yourself of a suffering, of an issue. That interconnectedness of everything, that source, loves us so much that it's transformed into a jewel. So that's just a place that's there now. And that's actually how we transform through our heart when we embrace our shadows and they turn into a space to empower our gifts, our energy. We're literally taking that vitality that we've spent all day, that's become kind of spent, and when we embrace it in the heart, then it becomes touched by heart energy. And then we align with spirit and the intent of everything, of existence, that all is good, that it's the innate goodness of everything. That's truly what we connect to when we connect to the source. So we have three things: vitality, energy, and spirit. And we revitalize ourselves by bringing issues into our heart and allowing them to exist in the energy field of our heart, and then aligning that with the spirit of the universe. And the spirit is one, so the spirit in us is also the spirit of the universe. There is no difference. We're just smaller, but it's still the same spirit of the universe. And that's where all the siddhas, the supernatural abilities, the miraculous capacities come from. And they're there with us all the time. So let's just take a moment and acknowledge our supernaturalness, our superconsciousness, if you like, and our heart and our energy field of our heart and the attention and the presence that exists there. And let's also just acknowledge our life force that has to go through all the things we do in a day and gives us, the power we need to get through our day. Let's just acknowledge all three at once for a moment. And realize we need all three. Our shadows hide our power, and our gifts release our genius, and our siddhas just remind us we're part of the spirit of the universe, which is one with everything anyway. And we're always there with that all the time. So we have all three of those, and they are all available all the time. So that concludes our little mini journey, and everybody can come back into the space as slowly or as quickly as you like. It's funny, I actually, in the last hour of my day when I'm doing my driving on my own, I actually create these, what we do, these things where we do these little journeys, I actually create them in my mind while I'm in my last hour of the day driving, because I'm like, oh, it just arises naturally. It's not something I ever planned. The last 2 or 3 meetings, I come up with kind of a rough draft of how that's going to go, and then it comes out like this at the beginning of the meetings. Just a little piece of information that's kind of fun to. I don't know what you would do with that, but that's how it actually occurs. At least right now. That could change too anytime. So with all of that, and before we get into the collective shadow and gift and Siddha, would anybody, otherwise I'll start as usual, just start sharing from our shadow state. Hopefully we're getting better at that now and we can really nail it in a sentence or two. And maybe spend possibly a little more time with the gifts and the siddhas, because they're just more, as you can see from the little journey we went on, gifts and siddhas are definitely a kind of a lot more fun to be in. Not that we're trying to be prejudiced, but it just is kind of intelligent to want to open space and do good things rather than stay closed and feel sorry for ourselves or whatever we do when we're in shadows, if you know what I mean. They're not very productive and they just make you shrink. I'd rather grow. It seems like that feels better. So, so my shadow today, or these days in general, it's not just today, but is feeling a sense of constriction in my heart, like I would like to be able to take what's in my heart and share it more and more and more all the time, because I do have something to share, and it's challenging to wait for the rest of my life to catch up with this leading edge of me that is capable of sharing very beautiful things, but hasn't yet created a life where I feel satisfied with the amount of time I get to do that. And that's it. That's what I meant by trying to do a shadow in a sentence or two. Because if you really, I really felt that's how it feels, you know. I think everybody felt that. And that's all we're looking for in a shadow. We don't need an elaborate mental explanation. We just need to be hit by it in the heart. So that's my shadow. That's enough. 2 sentences or 3, whatever.
Thank you for that wonderful intro. I really just I found my shadow pretty quickly, and pulling it into my heart really, and embracing it. I feel like I need to do that more often. My shadow that came up for me was it's kind of similar to yours, Dharmendra. It's a different iteration of it, but I've felt like I've been trying to create art, and so far have felt very directionless with it. And having found you all and climate healers, I've really decided that the direction I want to take my art is, through my heart. I want it to, just like you said, there are these beautiful things that we all experience and want to express with each other. And my favorite way of expressing myself is through music, and getting to the point where I'm either creating something that actually does that, versus my telling myself that I'm there's something missing. Like there's this disconnection in myself, um, in that I don't feel like I'm accomplishing that. And Melissa's comments at the meeting the other day, and I just went and saw one of my favorite musicians play. There's this. I've been feeling a real push to work at that and try and figure out how to be more either. Well, I really don't. I'm not quite sure what it is. I don't know if I have the language yet to talk about it. But I've just been sitting with that and trying to figure out how to create the art that expresses what I'm feeling these days.
So a question for you on that. Is it a sense, do you feel a sense of limitation at present? Like you don't have enough information or skill or knowledge yet to do that? I'm trying to get to what is the issue, what's stopping you, and what is that thing?
Yeah, it's
you're kind of talking around it because I know it's kind of, I hear you, I feel you, so I understand why, but maybe we could zero in on, is it a confusion then maybe or something?
I think it might be a lot of it feels like imposter syndrome, where there's so many people out there doing this already. How can it's psychological, I guess. I, I I have created things in the past that I feel like my represent me well. So I know I'm capable of it, but I get caught up in the elsewhere, in the motivation, in the is this worth doing? Is it something that is there a place for this? Am I just adding, that those kind of thoughts.
Yeah, it just sounds like you're early on into it. So that's natural. There's going to be a lot of shadow there because you just simply haven't gone into it enough to know yet what you're up against. Because there's just too many pieces. It's like, well, I guess you could say fragmented at this point until you start to come together more behind it. Does that seem right? Kind of. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm trying to just trying to give a succinct statement for each person, with their shadow. Evan, yes.
Yeah, I just figured it was appropriate for me to share my shadow because I've been dealing with a similar feeling around music. And I think the shadow that I confronted today and I continue to confront is one of moving forward and just allowing myself to keep moving forward without clinging to things that have gone by. And I've noticed that as being something I come up against in my music is that the only time when I'm comfortable to create music that I feel like is really inspiring to me is when I am just like fearlessly moving forward to wherever the music is taking me, and I feel like I'm yet to always be able to do that in music and yet to be able to do that in life, where I can just wake up comfortably and comfortably move forward, not knowing exactly how today is going to fit in the puzzle of my life. And so, yeah, my shadow seems to be like letting go and moving forward today.
Awesome. Yeah, that's like a way better way of explaining my shadow. Thank you, Evan.
It's so nice when a synergy like that happens, where somebody opens through somebody else, basically. See, that's really what I love about that's part of how I define accelerated collective evolution. We start to realize that we're all kind of interblended with each other through our auras and through our energy, and also through our mental fields, and through even deeper fields that we haven't learned a lot about yet. But yeah, so that's really neat. That was a nice synergy to see that when that opens like that. Anybody else would like to bring up and put some light on their shadow?
Well, I can certainly relate to Evan and Benjamin. When it comes to art, I've really been missing music, which I used to work on pretty regularly. And what you had to say, Dharmendra, rang. It's kind of mixed in with what Evan and Benjamin have had to say. For me, like, I miss the art, and I miss the heartful state that I would be in when I was making that. And I've been feeling unable to access that same state. I don't know exactly what to call it, but I felt maybe over the past month or two, have felt my heart constricted, and just like tending more towards apathy than I had in months before. Yeah, and that's very frustrating to me, because I want to provide that to these groups, to these meetings, because I think that's a really important thing for me to provide. I don't know. So that's about it.
Thanks, Nolan. And Benjamin and Evan. Ray, are you there? Did you want to open up any sunlight into your shadow realm, if you're there?
I've been thinking about it. Things have come up over the weeks. Today was kind of a tricky one, because I kind of just went from one thing to another. There's one I've been kind of wrestling with, and it's hard to articulate, but it definitely has to do with activism and how to maintain a non-aggressive approach to activism. My previous occupations and previous engagements with different groups that have different tactics have kind of all blended together. And I think there's kind of stalling on it a little bit. One thing I did do today was read a paper that Sailesh Rao suggested that I read, that by Skeptical Science, about debunking, and a lot of it has to do with putting yourself into the minds of the people that are listening to you, and anticipating their objections. And one of the key ones was that they're quite often, set in there, have their mind made up about a particular fact of life, and for them to reject it and see things in a different way is trying to anticipate the resistance, making it more about them than about you, which is probably a stumbling block for a lot of activists who have a lot of great things to say, that it's really about the person that you're talking to on an individual basis. And this kind of gets tangled with other activism that is either outreach to a group where you're part of one group approaching another group, or you're an individual approaching another individual. And having that flexibility of mind to be able to adapt to different situations is something that activists that find themselves in a lot of different headspaces have to be very flexible, whereas some have their thing that they do, and it involves a lot of yelling and a lot of strangers and not very much conversation. Those have their place, and I've done those kind of things before, but that's less what my activism is about now. I do believe there's all voices for all ears, and that there's a lot of the different tactics that have different places in both the activist arc, our character arc, as we go from one kind of activism to another. And the people that we're talking to, the people engaged, they're all on a journey as well. And some of them are just at the beginning stage needing to be woken up, and some people are at the stage where they need to have their questions answered. They're starting to have those questions and trying to be the person that is able to calm down and engage with that kind of conversation. I think it's something that I've been able to do, but it's more engagement with environmentalists that I hit the frustration level that I feel that they should know better, that they need to be called out, that there needs to be some sort of a, enough is enough. It's time to tell the truth. So this document was about telling the truth and evoking the truth, but engaging in a way that's a little bit more less like an activist that's speaking, more like an exploration, a scientific exploration, engaging the truth. I think that actually the first time you mentioned the word shadow today, the first thing I thought of was that we actually had a nuclear scare in the Toronto area recently. A few days ago, there was a alarm that went off at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then a retraction saying there was all a mistake at 9 o'clock. But it was just a mistake, emergency cell phone warning that went out to everybody. And my wife and I decided to celebrate by watching the Chernobyl series, which may be a strange response to it, but it certainly had a lot to do with the truth, had a lot about people coming to terms with what their lives are about. A lot of people sacrificing their lives for the greater good, recognizing a greater good, and finding clarity in this horrible event. And those themes have been running through my day and through my night. I know I've been waking up and realizing I've been dreaming something that has to do with solving a Chernobyl-like problems. And those waking up feeling like you've spent hours trying to solve a problem and then going about your day solving problems can sometimes tire you out a little bit faster than the average day.
Hey, Ray, may I share a little bit?
Sure.
But because you are talking, it's your space, but I'm picking up a couple of things. your heart, because I haven't heard this particular melody coming through your voice before, but your heart actually sounds tired. I feel something almost of a weariness, that you've been through a lot in a. I just get the sense that you do have a big heart and you feel a lot and you really take in a lot of what's going on out there, and you're starting to really come up against that and really see that. And I think I get this hit that your compassion wants to come out and find as many skillful ways to express what you know is right in your heart. But at the moment, it's quite something, I'm guessing, a daunting task.
There's also some element in it that has to do with being a couple. I am the rational one, the grounded one, and Kelly gets to be the emotional one. And I feel comfortable in that role, but there must be part of me that wants to be the wants to panic, wants to resist. And she's actually been asking to watch this Chernobyl series for quite a while because she said it was highly acclaimed and it got reviewed really highly. And I was thinking, you don't want to watch this. This isn't the sort of thing that gravitates to your spirit. This is the sort of thing that would upset you. And it didn't upset her. I think that having this moment where a nearby nuclear plant everything's fine with the plant, but it kind of, stood up and waved at everybody for a moment. And there's this collective feeling that happened in the city where everybody was making jokes about it, but they're uneasy jokes. They're jokes that come from a place of deep relief that that there are times when we may be called to be neighbors, to deal with something that's very deep and impactful for entire communities. And we live in a community where we don't really know our neighbors. We know a few of their names, but we don't really have any meaningful contact. And that's part of this kind of big city culture that we live in.
So there's that's laced all underneath, and everything you're saying is laced all underneath with the primary motivator of shadows, which is fear, actually terror. But keeping it together and joking about it, relief kind of, not yet anyway, terror, which is a powerful collective, but that's kind of like, that is the motivator of all shadows. Like love is the motivator of all gifts. Fear is the motivator of all shadows. So no wonder you're tired in your heart. You're immersed in a sea of something that's kind of collectively stressful.
Yeah, it's something that I've been telling myself. It's just fiction. It's just fiction. But of course, Chernobyl wasn't. that happened, and things like that do happen in real life, and it's happening in different parts of the world right now. That people are in a state of suffering. People are, showing their true colors and doing heroic things in awful situations. So, it's kind of that fear of being tested, where I put into that same kind of situation where I'd be able to perform as bravely as the coal miners who dug underneath the reactor, knowing they were exposed to radiation.
Sometimes I find myself fantasizing about that exact situation where, like, it's some kind of huge, just the big city living, not knowing your neighbor thing, and there being this ginormous disaster that needs to happen in order for us to come together and finally start talking to each other and supporting one another. And sometimes I'll just find myself thinking about, well, what if that happens? What would I be doing, and what would our relationship be with everyone around us if that did happen? And so I'm not sure if that's helpful, but I think that I think about it sometimes.
And I think about it because I know that there's at least one organization that has tried to organize different communities and tried to get different community leaders in different neighborhoods to be a center from which they can connect and have disaster crises kind of preparation. And I know it exists, and I was talking to people that were part of it, and then I went, oh yeah, what was that group again? I can't remember. I've lost track. But yeah, after Chernobyl, I was thinking maybe I should try to resurrect that. Not only because of the power plant, which is 20 kilometers away, according to their map, which I had to look up. I was amused to find that I'm 1 block out of the 20-mile radius of, and my son, who went away to school, is 1 block outside of the other side of the radius. 20 kilometers from this power plant in Ontario.
Yowie. Ray, you've done a beautiful job of creating a kind of, it's so funny what I was intending for the meeting today as I was visualizing the little mini journey we all went on in my last hour of the day, but I also got a hit about a theme that went into a collective thing, and you're kind of starting to weave that collective shadow. Just by the way you're sharing what you're sharing, I feel this sense now of the world we're living in and the incredible instability, and if you really feel it on some days, you can almost drive yourself to neurosis if you really tune into it, because you can cut it with a knife how thick the fear is out there if you really feel it. It's there all the time out there. But I also in what I saw for the theme that we can start to head into it now, because you've already kind of opened it, the collective shadow, but also your own personal, it's in your voice. You're exhausted with something on some level about communication, and that's that's what I was thinking as we moved into a collective kind of gift level, how to open up. Because I was just thinking, how can we communicate this veganism to the rest of the world, and start doing it in a really artful way, in a really savvy way, in a really efficient way, in a really smooth way, in a really soft way, in a really loving way, in a very convincing way. I mean, how do we get all those qualities in there without also imposing or shoving down anybody's throat our righteous indignation? How do we keep it clean, and how do we stay detached enough to really see the bigger picture and remember the bigger picture and everything that is included? I mean, in all these meetings, we're bringing out more and more pieces of the bigger picture. So through all of us, we're really getting a really good idea of the picture we're dealing with, and how do we move sensitively into all of that, but yet with the precision of a, I don't want to use the term a hunter, but somebody that has a single pointed focus on a certain objective, and there's nothing going to deter them from that objective. But at the same time, they're as soft and caring as a mother with a newborn child. It's somehow got to have such a subtle balance in it. And so. But before we go there, I just wanted to see if anybody else had any other shadow, because there's one other person, I'm not sure. She may just want to be silent tonight, but I'm going to give a moment of silence in case she wants to share anything before we move to the next step, because I'm starting to open where we're going to go next. Yeah, okay. I'm thinking, yeah, she'll come in if she feels like it anyway, but so as we move into the gift now, my thought on the gift was, now that we've opened the field of terror, for me, it's like the gift I want to share tonight is an example of a possible way to bridge that gap between the difficulty in communicating with all those qualities, given the situation we're in, the terror of the situation we're in. But what is coming up in my heart tonight that's not necessarily connected in a sequence from where I came from constriction, but there's just a deep sense of gratefulness that we have this platform and that we're all starting to connect, and that there's so many people that want to start something that isn't what the world has been based upon up to now, which is greed. And to do something that's coming from the heart, that has deep caring in it and cares about all life. And so just in the sense of feeling gratefulness, it's like when I feel the sense of gratefulness, I feel grateful for every one of you in my life, and beyond this meeting, everyone who I've met through all these meetings, and anybody who I've met in my life that's really deeply touched my heart. And what I notice is that when I get into my heart and I feel grateful, it gives me a way of tapping into who I'm in front of and connecting with them from a real place, rather than from a place of my own agenda, or a place of fear, of like being a mouthpiece for what's on the news, or something superficial, or a complaint about how my day's going, or boring them with some story of my past that may not have anything to do with anything. It's just been bugging me for days and I needed to tell it to somebody. Instead of those kind of things, really just tuning into the other person in front of me and their heart, and looking at who they are and what they need, and then just trusting that whatever comes out of me is what's going to be needed in that situation, to exchange with that person that could be of benefit to both of us in ways we may not even know yet. And that I mean it in the everyday, down to earth sense of out in the grocery store shopping, or at the coffee shop, or at work, in that sense of just how to start to take the same attunement that I can feel with you guys in these spaces that have been set up so, with such care and love for us to start to practice meditation in action, is what I call this, really, is meditation in action. We're practicing literally meditation in action so that we can start to bring it into our vegan activities. But even further and beyond our vegan activities, as they extend out to the limits and borders of that area, where we're starting to talk to other people we don't even know, or people in our families even, where it gets really tough, or old friends, or old acquaintances we know from other, situations we might have been in, other societies or groups or whatever we might have been in our past. And how do we start to open it up? Because I've certainly chased people away with some of my intense verbiage, and even though it may have been true, it wasn't loving in coming across to people. So what I'm kind of hinting at here is that as I open my gift, also that we're opening up a collective forum right now where we can actually maybe start to apply a little of our meditation in action, and start to explore, just in the way we communicate with each other and the ideas we're going to share here, how to start finding ways to start sharing veganism in our communication with others in life in some respectful ways, and remembering to respect the people we're sharing it with, even if they're not vegan, even if we know what that they're doing is we know what that is, if they're eating meat still or everything, that we find a way to and it's also a challenge for me. That's a big thing, to bring my gratefulness out so much that I'm even grateful to people who might give me the opportunity, even though they're not vegan, to start sharing about veganism. So that's as much as I can open right now of my gift of the gratefulness, in terms of, because I'm bringing it right to the edge, where how can I apply this gratefulness right at the border of as much as I can do, where I really am challenged, like how can I open that up and share it? Because really a true accelerated collective evolution, we always start in the shadow with ourselves. But the minute we step into the gift, as we start to get better at how do we actually apply this to the collective we exist in the world, in the whole world and all the people in it. That's really the kind of gift that we're talking about when we want to start to move from the shadow to the gift. And I'm purposely not jumping all the way up into the juiciness of the gift yet, because I kind of want all of us to get there together and kind of work our way out of the shadow like I'm kind of doing. Honestly, because I'm no better at any of the rest of you guys at really trying to be savvy and artful about how I share the veganism in a way that, at least opens a space, if nothing else. At least it opens a space of communication between myself and another that may not be vegan. Because that, I think, is it's just the theme I thought of tonight. How do we communicate veganism? I mean, to those who aren't, because it just seems to be such a big thing. It's really just to even talk about it, let alone get people, just to create a space where it gets into somebody's mind, and not in a sneaky way, not in a we're right, you're wrong, we need to get this into you sort of way because you don't know any better. That's not where I'm coming from. It's more just about coming so much from our own heart and if we really get in touch with how grateful we are for being alive, and we express that in truth by not harming others, that's true gratefulness. And to me, that's all I'm talking about. We all have it as vegans. We already have it. It's already there. So that's the aspect I'm tuning into. I'm not saying anybody else needs to use that gift. And that's not a gift on the official chart. There's lots of different gifts that are outside of that chart. But it is connected to graciousness. If you're grateful, you're gracious. And that is in the chart. And you become gracious and you become considerate of others, even if they're not. And you do it from your heart, not just because you should or because it's the right thing to do, but because that is probably one of the most powerful things you can do to touch another, is be gracious with them from your heart. To treat them like you'd like to be treated. I mean, really, we would all like to be treated wonderfully. So we should be treating people that way. That in itself seems to me, through gratefulness, to be a way to start to open but it takes a lot of being present and really remembering myself and really remembering that place. I really have to stay present with who I am in order to pull that one off. That's not like you can just think about it and go, oh, I'll go out and do that. And the next thing you know, you're distracted, and then you're yelling at somebody for, almost running you over or something, whatever. But you know what I mean? It can very quickly escalate in a different direction if you can't hold your space with it. So I think this is a great place and that's another thing I use this space for, the Vegan Synergy Meditation, is to create these kind of spaces where we can, even in the beginning, maybe stumble a little. I feel like I'm stumbling a bit, just trying to shift up into a gift right now from a shadow into a collective where I'm a smooth and artful and savvy communicator of veganism to people in a way that isn't offensive. But this is the space we can do that in, and that's as much as I can open it, but I think that's a good start. And I have a feeling that hopefully somebody else's engines got a little bit started by that and might know what kind of a gift they'd like to throw into the space and see. I'm done for the moment.
Well, I would say that really touched me and connected with me, because I've been trying to figure out how to communicate with others, just in general. Actually, the last couple of years, I've found a lot of benefit from kind of reviewing how I've been communicating with people, because I felt like I used to communicate with people in a violent manner. I didn't realize I was kind of taking bites, which I just wasn't conscious that I was doing that. And then eventually I did become vegan, and I know the turning point for me was doing this sort of exchange of self with the other being the animals, and recognizing that would be horrible, and I've realized now that maybe that's the best approach for me to try and do empathize with people who aren't vegan, is doing this exchange of self with other. But I think doing it with people is a lot harder, because the issues that people come up against are much closer to the issues that I come up against. So when I'm frustrated with other people, it seems I feel like I'm in this battle with my old self that I still haven't fully come to terms with. And yeah, I don't know. I really like what you said about just talking, just seeing others and trying to be in their shoes. I think you had said something like that. That's all that was kind of the main thing I was trying to bring about, was just that for me, the exchange of self with others seems to be really powerful in communicating with people who aren't vegan. But it's definitely like, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells when I try and communicate about it.
That's something I struggle with too. And what you both said kind of helped tie in for me my my journey towards the gift here today is when I surround myself with people who are more and more capable of reaching that that space where they approach every conversation with that kind of compassion towards themselves and towards the other. It inspires me to first it gives me an opportunity to talk with somebody who's already doing it in a different way. We all have the way that we naturally arrive at, and then we learn by example, and or at least that's something that's a way that I learn. I found it incredibly helpful to just keep having conversations with vegans, because they're naturally using nonviolent language, because that's like what this is all based on. So like it becomes super apparent to me when I start saying something and it doesn't necessarily align with and I'm not going to do a great job of describing this either. It doesn't necessarily align with the way that someone else in the room would say it, or and what it gives me the opportunity to do is to start thinking, okay, well, there's this Dharmendra personality. What would Dharmendra say here, or how would Dharmendra think about this? And I'm just using you as an example, Dharmendra. And it kind of gives you, for me, it's not, I have no idea what it's like to be you, Dharmendra, but I get at least a sense, or this like small perspective that's different from my own, that I can kind of append to my own experiences, and then try to look through that little angle, and then there's like the application of it, and staying with yourself in these external conversations, that I think for me, like just practicing has been really helpful, and through some of my more recent experiences, I've noticed that my language around this in the more passionate conversations has gotten has improved. Like I don't revert back to my old self as often, and so I guess I don't know if this is helpful, Evan, but keep on doing what you're doing. I love hearing your perspective, because it also helps me too. Like we were all at like yeah, I'm I'm stuck now, but
No, wait, but what I love about you, Benjamin, is what I love is just by walking through your process, your gift is coming out. I could feel your whole energy shift, your whole vibration shift out of the shadow and start going to the gift. That's all that matters. There is no right or wrong way to do it, you know. For you to just to continue elaborating, it seems that's how it works for you. It's not. I don't see you're going to go, okay, it's like this and this, you know. And anyway, that takes a lot of practice over a long time of doing this kind of work to get precision. Precision will come with time. That's also a gift, but that's a gift that you have to. The only way you get that one is you have to earn it over a long period of time. Some gifts, you know, you can open like all of a sudden and use and be inundated by and carried with and allow it to flood your consciousness, and it can give you insights and things. Other gifts don't do it that way. They open very slowly, and you really just have to put energy into them. And I can see that you would like to have more precision and stuff there, but just you're elaborating, and it just, that works, and your vibration shifts, and you kind of trust it, and you just kind of go with the flow of whatever you're saying, and that works too. That's a really neat thing, you know. That's kind of like you're inducing a freshness into the space out of this entropic, you know, place we were coming from in the shadow. You're just opening and inducing a freshness into it. That's just coming through your elaborating. So that's beautiful. And that's how it's opening for you.
And I think that's I appreciate you saying that, because that's kind of how I work musically as well. And I don't know if this is how you work, Evan, but I don't hear melodies in my head all day long. It takes an instrument in front of me and the sound itself to start really like things just start popping up in my head as soon as I hear that first sound. And when I'm conversing like this, I'm not thinking about this entire thought in my head beforehand and going about it the best way. Like I don't know if that's just like the way I was raised, how I grew up. But it's the idea of improvisation, and going, like letting go, and allowing it to just happen. And I'm saying all this, but I have a really hard time with it too. Like just that what you were saying earlier, Evan, that letting go piece, because they're very, like, I feel like there are very few spaces where it's acceptable to do that. Especially when you're trying to figure it out for the first time or try something new. And I really appreciate that this space is available to do that, and to kind of bring it all together. It's inspiring to me that spaces like this keep on popping up, and there are more and more people oriented towards creating safe spaces like this, and it's only seems to be growing, and that's got me now I'm hopeful.
Yeah, and what you were just saying kind of gave me a neat little impression about this is kind of like a creative laboratory, but what we're creating is ourselves. That's what we're doing, and then with that we can go out and do whatever things we need to do. But here is like a laboratory of being. Who are you? And creating that, you know. And then once we've created that, then it's just a matter of going and doing whatever it is your intent is about. So I got all that from just what you just shared. I don't know if that was your intent, but it just kind of opened up something in me to see, because you were describing something, and I got a lot out of what you were saying, even though it might have had a musical past background for you. It could have been applied to anything, just because you didn't get specific about, you know, a certain skill. You just kind of left it open, the description. And so that was really, I think that was a very helpful piece. And that's why I like opening it like this. And sometimes I'm not going to, when I started, I said, I'm just trying to crawl out of the shadow here. Because a lot of times I may be the least, gifted in a certain gift that we're trying to open, which might be communication out in public, in the face, and trying to get across the vegan ideas in a smooth and thoughtful way. But that's why the space is beautiful, because then as everybody adds a piece, all of a sudden it's like wow, we get stuff we didn't see, and we don't, from different angles. So it's kind of a magical laboratory too, because you just never know what you're going to see when somebody says something either. Because I certainly know that whatever I saw wasn't what you were intending. You were doing what you were doing, and you were sharing with Evan. And maybe it was, but I don't know. But at the same time, what I picked up out of it, that's why it's so magical, because it's just insights come just in somebody else sharing something. And so so it's always good once in a while too, to acknowledge the space we're creating, because that empowers the space to keep being the space. So that's good too. It's not like we're just talking about it because we think we're cool or whatever. No, it's about being grateful for a creative space like this that's safe, that we can grow in together and use and utilize all of our knowledge and experience and wisdom and everything, and just without any barriers between us. That just makes it so powerful. So I guess if Nolan or Ray would like to participate in getting the communication of veganism across to the public at large, collective gift we'd like to share with the world's participation.
Can I hear the question again about getting the message of veganism across to the world?
Well, you remember when you were working on your shadow and you were kind of talking about the nuclear scare and all that. But then what it did, it reminded me that because you're already shifting into a collective vibration from your personal experience and then the shared experience of the terror of the situation. So it reminded me that what I wanted to do today was to open up a collective gift level, not just a personal gift level. We had an individual shadow. Now I wanted to open up a collective gift, but it's about how difficult it is and how challenging it is to get the message out of veganism to the world at large. And that's what we're up against. And you were going through a lot of different areas, but now it's like we're trying to open up what kind of, what gift can you bring out that can help us maybe all get a little bit more, because we're all doing that now. I started it by kind of crawling up out of, well, this is kind of this and that, and then these guys have been adding pieces to it, and it's just, what pieces could you add to this growing accumulation of skills we can apply to this possible gift we can do, and the gift being veganism, because veganism is a gift. But how do we make that a gift in the world without it be, how do we shift, like you were talking about, how do we shift ourselves from being perceived as these vegan terrorists to, these people that are just very loving beings that people want to be around because they're vegan, and how do we make that shift, and what kind of communication will it take to go from the one to the other? If that's a good enough frame for you to play with.
We have to make people fall in love with the truth. The truth of our situation, the truth of the limits of our planet are the things that people just don't understand at all. They feel like the world is so big and capable of taking so much of a beating. It can. The rock part of it, the living biosphere, is not quite as robust as we'd like to think it is. And many people talk about how it will carry on without us. But that's not a good enough answer. We have to be able to do our part in reversing the damages that we've done, because we're going to take a lot of species of animals with us. It's not a consolation prize that those bad human Homo sapiens will be wiped off with as one of those species that are going extinct. That doesn't interest me at all. That conversation, I think, is a cop-out. I think it's a lot about the great the best parts of our civilization that we've created, those are the things that we should be really worried about, that we've been able that we're able to accumulate a strength of mind that builds with each generation, that we can come up with something like veganism. There's elements of it that have existed for a long time. Like Pythagoras was a vegetarian and understood the impacts on animals, and very much an ethical vegetarian. But these are all things that, and I know that because we have a system of recording our civilization. It's accumulative, and a collapse of our society would, even if some of the human race manages to survive in isolated areas, all that is lost, and that's the tragedy. That's what we have to focus on, because that is such a great project that we could eventually create a circle of compassion that includes all humans and all animals, all species. We're all earthlings, and we all belong to be here. We all belong on Earth, and that's a project that could unfold within my lifetime, and I'm pretty excited about that. So that's what I want to share with people, is that there's the ancient Chinese proverb, or I guess it's a curse: may you live in interesting times. And we live in the most interesting of times, where there's like a convergence of all sorts of different technological and biological challenges that are opening new ways of communicating with each other, opening new communities, opening new definitions of who your neighbor is. There's probably more in common with the different generations. My son's generation, he probably has more in common with video game playing kids in Korea than he does with his parents, and that's a good thing. That's reshuffling the deck and coming up with something that all the baggage that the human race has accumulated, it doesn't necessarily have to follow from generation to generation. He has the potential to, shrug off that Cold War that everybody is so afraid of Russia, and you just have to mention Russia, and my generation, my parents' generation, will lose their minds and go, "Oh, the Russians are coming. The Russians are interfering with our elections. The Russians are represented by certain people in the Democratic Party." This is such an easy thing for the older generation to have their minds controlled in that way, and it doesn't happen with generation. They have a totally different impression of Russia. And most of it they've gathered through YouTube. So you're able to see real Russians on YouTube and go, those are real people. They're not some monster that we thought they were in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s. People are people, and we're starting to understand that. So people are coming to terms with all of recorded history where we were exceptional. We were told by our religions that we're better than everything else, and that we have this role of higher in the hierarchy of the grand scheme of things, that we were given this planet and we're given dominion of it. So we now have the opportunity to either decide we're animals just like every other animal, or we have the ability to say we're animals, but the superiority, the advantage that we have doesn't have anything to do with dominion in the sense of domineering. It's dominion in the sense of caretaker, that we have a role to play. And part of Sailesh's message is that we're the thermostat species. We've created all this technology because it actually has a purpose. The end result is that we're going to control the climate. We're going to get control of this problem that we've created, and we're going to fix it, and we're going to maintain it. This realizing this new role for humanity, not the destroyer of worlds, but the maintenance crew, with that kind of humility too. Not the overlords, we're the maintenance crew. And I think it's a good thing for us to start having that kind of humility and thinking of how we can humble ourselves. And that's the only way it's ever going to happen, is if we manage to find some humility And as vegans, we see that. We see the people who resist veganism because of some taste preference, because of some cultural preference, some idea that they have, which was so much more important than any of the things that I've been talking about. But veganism is a logical choice for the future. It's not just an emotional choice; it's a logical choice. And this was a very big factor for me as I became a vegan. I had to get over this idea that it was temporary, and I just realized this is the decay of our planet is going to force us to become vegan whether we want to or not. So what do you do when you have the scoop on where the stock market is going to go? You got your hot tip, the future's vegan. You can keep it to yourself or you can share it with people. So that's what I've decided to do. Is my life is going to be sharing that vision of the future. And the consequences, like if I'm wrong, then we lost.
Ray, I'm really enjoying what you're doing tonight. You're kind of our bridge every time into the next step. It's like you mentioned humility, which is actually a siddha. That's actually like if you can be truly humble in the face of all this. I mean, that in itself, the state of humility is what we all need. That's really, in a nutshell, the answer to how do we communicate this message to the world. You have to be humble. Any other way, I mean, it's just so obvious. And so I just like how you're kind of just, you know, how these meetings go, you never know, but you're kind of our lead, you're kind of our voyager into, you're our lead man. Let's send Ray out there and see what happens. And then when he comes back, we'll know where we're headed tonight. It's kind of, if I was to, you know, play with it, paraphrase it and all, but it's kind of fun. So
I thought it was the tail end Charlie.
Yeah, whatever, or the fourth guy up in the from the batter's box. The what I forgot what they call it because I don't follow. What do you call it? I don't follow sports in so long, but it's always the fourth guy that's, you know, the main guy in the baseball team. The fourth guy up.
The cleanup hitter.
It's something like that. The cleanup guy, yeah. But that's just kind of. I don't know if I'd look at it like that though. What you're doing, it's just more like the scout who goes out and scans the territory to see where the best way to go next is. Where we need to head from here. But before we get there, because you're always opening, you take us from where we are, and I'm kind of the guy dragging us up from wherever we're coming from. So it's just kind of fun to play this tonight. I love it. That's what I love about these spaces too. You can see it from so many different angles, and doing so helps your consciousness to see how processes work too between humans, which is fun. It makes it useful because then it actually slides into your behaviors out there in similar scenarios where these qualities can kind of slip out. But I just wanted to ask Nolan if he had any part, if he wanted to play his part in the opening up his aspect of the gift of communicating the vegan humbleness, well, and many other things, but just to use a hint of where we can head with this. Nolan, do you have anything you'd like to share? Is your voice and your gift and your energy from your heart available? Or wants to be available, I should say.
Yeah, I guess what I've been racking my head for months now around basically the optimal way of organizing and organizing people and information, and basically searching for this like evolution in technology, and it's coming from a bunch of different directions, and my brain's kind of gone all over the place, and I've been doing a bunch of late night Google searching and exploring and you know, trying to see like, okay, is somebody else developing what I'm thinking about here, and you know, where is everybody else at with this? And the kind of struggle in even figuring out where everybody else is at is kind of the ironic like reason for wanting to build this next step in information technologies. And it's still not super clear to me. And that's been pretty frustrating, but I can sense this thing coming that is bound to make the way that we communicate just vastly more efficient and effective, which I think we need so desperately in these times when feels like there's just so much, feels like there's too much the information, the amount of information that's out there has absolutely exploded, and it's just bound to enter into this like the next phase of the way that we're using creating and using information and communicating that. The next phase of it is going to be way organized far better than it is currently. And that organization is going to coincide with our collective thought and experience being unified in this way. And so as far, I mean, in what I'm talking about is pretty general purpose. But, because I know you asked about veganism specifically. But I mean, this is something I think about when I look at like Sailesh and these folks he's connected to. There just seems to me like some way that we can all be better organized. Like I don't have great words for it. There's kind of a word cloud, but that's the gift I guess I want to bring to this, along with just generally being able to speak on these things. And that's really that's a gift that we're all bringing to this. That if we're honest, not everyone has that, and it really is something to have at the table and to help with the cause. So I think that's about all I have to say.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nolan. Funny enough, as you were speaking, it gave me the final insight to jump into our third and final phase of the evening of the supernatural abilities, or super consciousness capacities, or attunements, or whatever you want to call it. But a couple different things is, one, when Evan was speaking about the exchanging spaces with another, in the last meeting last week, I opened up this technique about when you're in front of a person, and this is the Siddha of compassion, and you're feeling whatever they're going through, and you're sensing their turbulence at being human in this world and what all that is about. And you just take and you embrace them with your heart, even if they're out there in front of you and not your own shadow or whatever. But the same thing you do with yourself, you reach out and do that. You reach out and do that with another person. And in order to be able to do that, without explaining it, you'll naturally embody compassion. You'll naturally allow yourself to become a lightning rod, a power pole that is conducing through yourself a higher frequency that literally is creating a field where you can take the energy of shadows outside of you and literally bring them inside of you, and then suffuse your aura with that fragrance of the gift that you wish to share with them. If you were in their shoes experiencing what they were experiencing, and what would you want instead of that? What would you want instead of that turbulence? You would want to be in your humanity. You want to be part of your, I'm my brother's keeper kind of thing. And you'd want to hold a space of grace for them to feel that they could open that up and just feel that they're in the presence of not a stranger, but of a brother, of somebody who's capable of, giving them solace just by their presence, just by being in front of them, and holding the space for them to be however they need to be. And then literally feeling that melting inside your own heart of somebody else's shadow. That's such a gift, to feel somebody else's shadow melt through your own heart when you do that. Because then you can enter into a space, no matter what space it is out there in the world, and everybody's going to perceive you as the shadow because they don't know you. It's not that you are the shadow, but if you can settle down into a space as the shadow and let the whole space hold you, then a whole other different kind of magic can start happening. People will start approaching you. You'll become a magnet. And then when they come into your sphere, then you can turn it around. You can take that, because they're going to come into your space, so you're going to feel their shadows, because unless they happen to be vegan, and then you can then don't worry about all that. Something else will happen. But if you're in a space you don't know, they're going to come into your space. You're going to feel that. You're going to absorb that shadow into your heart. So it's kind of, I hope this translates through the video well, because it's really about first you being a shadow in a public space, and then allowing the attraction of other shadows around you, and then a transformation can occur. And you're just doing good in the world just by being in the world. I mean, truly, that's what compassion is. That's what a saint is. Saint just goes around doing literally that. They go into a space, nobody knows them, so they're like a shadow. So everybody puts their light on him, unknowingly giving that fellow tons of juice so he can work with a lot of energy. And when he's not reacting and he's just absorbing all that energy, it creates an attraction field. And then people start coming into that field. And then he starts absorbing their shadows. He starts taking their shadows into his heart. And he holds those shadows and he embraces those shadows in his heart. And because of what he knows via what we practice here, and he must have learned it somewhere, because obviously humans, we all grow in similar ways through the spectrum of consciousness. He may not have learned it exactly like this, but on some level naturally, he'll, in embracing that shadow of another with his heart and loving it, it's going to transform it into whatever the gift is. And then gifts, once they come, they're meant to be shared. They're just going to spread through his aura and wash back over that person. Then that person will have a choice, because they're definitely going to feel a moment of threshold where the shadow's slipping away and a gift is coming in. And if they're not paying attention, it's just going to happen. But if they are paying attention, then it's up to them. They are either going to get up and leave, hold on to their shadow and say, this guy is some kind of weirdo, he's a freak, I don't know what he's doing. And they won't know why they're thinking that. But that's what's going to go on in their mind as they leave. Or they're going to just connect, and they're going to say, boy, this is a really interesting conversation. I really like connecting with this guy. What is he talking about? This is really turning me on. Male or female, doesn't matter. It's not about a sexual thing. It's about an energy thing. There's a resonance going on. So that's kind of a way to open up, and kind of, instead of so much a experiential, like many times in the meetings in the past when I shipped into a citadel, just overwhelm the space with kind of a higher frequency. This time I actually kind of wanted to give a little bit of a technical description of how that actually occurs, so you can actually like put something like that into action, where you can actually start to apply a siddha, which in this case is compassion. For me, what really hit me tonight is about, yes, Evan.
I was hoping that you could elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by being the shadow in public for other people.
Well, the minute you move into a space you've never been into before, And nobody knows you. By law, you're a shadow. You're unknown. You're an unknown. You haven't been unveiled yet. You haven't been uncovered. You need to be discovered in order to see what you are. So at that point, everybody's going to put their light on you. Who's this stranger? So everybody's zooming in with their senses, trying to sense you in some way. Some people will smell you. Some people will maybe have to come up and touch you and say, hi, who are you? I'm so-and-so, and shake your hand. Some people, may just hear the way you move, or watch the way you move, or just look at you and see how you're dressed and how you, whatever. So it starts as that, but then as you just maintain your center and you literally own that mystery, and you hold it and you feel that all that energy and you allow it to come into you, then you literally it starts to change your field and you start to become known. And then people want to know you because you haven't resisted it. You haven't covered yourself up or got lost in your iPhone or whatever and hid and shut yourself, and shunted your aura so people can't get in, because you're putting up barriers by focusing on things where they can't come into because they don't know what you're focusing on. So you stay open. You stay open. You don't get lost in something, because then it cuts you psychically from the connection. Mm-hmm. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and this is also a time I've realized after doing this, the 6th meeting, this is also a time as we shift into the Siddha for question and answer too. It's a good time if there's, like what Evan just demonstrated, it's a good time if we want clarification on stuff, or about, or you can also, open up your own sense of what, tonight seems to be more technical. I kind of went more into a technical description of how to shift from a gift to a siddha and how to apply it in the world. So if you want to take that route, or if you just want to kind of jump in and let your energy just, go into a higher frequency, because that's where we want to just, with our intent, because every step we do in these meetings is with our intent. So our intent now is in super consciousness or supernatural ability, however you want to call it, siddhas. So with that intent in mind, anybody else wants to open the space? Also innocence. By asking a question like that was, really well phrased, Evan demonstrated the siddha of innocence. Innocence is also a siddha, because he asked the question, then was totally open to receive the answer out of innocence. So that is part of the siddha stuff. So I just want to make it's sure that if you do question and answers, it's always part of it can very much be part of the siddha, because we're allowing wisdom to flow, and wisdom is also a siddha. So, and so is innocence. So the receiver and the giver are both in a siddhic realm when that's happening, or siddhic vibration, I should say. And I'll just get back to where I started. For me, compassion I could see, as Ray was sharing, humility is a beautiful siddha needed to bring this message of veganism to the world. For me, and I understand that what was hitting me more this evening is compassion. That's why I went into the discourse to open for me because it should always be unique to each one of us. I mean, we, as much as we can appreciate each person's contribution, because that way, even though we're starting now to hum all together through our bellies as one frequency of universal, universal intent, as a synchronized group, we also want to each have our unique and individual facet shining. So we grow ourselves in the process, grow and develop through our spirit. This is the spirit phase. So I'm starting to find words that might be more user friendly. This is the spirit phase of the evening, where we connect in with spirit, which is one, whether it's universal at the big scale or universal as us, the smallest scale of a universe. We're the smallest scale of a universe, by the way. Universe doesn't get any smaller than us. But we have so much in us in one place, and we can develop every capacity all the way up. So we are by law a universe, the smallest universe that can exist without losing the full potency of God. I'll just put it, of God. but that's something we have to earn, obviously, and that's so that is another good inspiration and motivation for these kind of meetings, because that's another central core principle of why I bring this stuff, is because of that, what I just said about being a microcosm of God is really the honest truth way to say it. So I'm just opening up a bit more the Siddha because nobody else is speaking yet. So bringing in more abstract concepts and breathing life into them a little bit in ways, that we can all experience together as a unified intent consciousness field. The other thing might be at this point, because I think it was you, Benjamin, who was mentioning something about remembering mentors and how mentors might do something. So here, what I might suggest, and what I do actually at the Siddha level, as I think about how would an angel express this. So I take it to literally a higher type of being, and use that as my mentor in order to help me get in touch with Siddha. And it doesn't matter if you know what an angel or not is. You can certainly imagine a being that's full of light and intelligence and works on more vaster levels, that affects a lot more things with every movement and thought he or she does, and and is also extremely compassionate in ways we may not even understand. And that's so it's just interesting that you mentioned that earlier, because that in the early days of learning to work with all this stuff, I don't do it anymore, not unless I intend to, because I don't need to, but in the beginning, that was very helpful for me to get in touch with siddhas. Was, well, how would a higher being, or you could even think of an ascended master, somebody like Christ or Buddha, who's not in a body anymore. What kind of a being they're like now, and what would they do in trying to express the message of veganism to the world? And we can even go beyond the message of veganism to the message of you could even make it even bigger, to the sense of everything you do is peaceful, and everything you do brings peace to every living creature, and the only thing you're about is peacefulness. I don't know, just as a thought. And that includes veganism, but obviously goes even deeper than that, because it involves not even harming the planet and finding ways to be creative with everything, and materials and everything, and inert objects and all that kind of stuff.
I'm not sure if this is a siddha, but I've thought of this recently, because it's come up recently, is this idea of nurturing a deep curiosity. And I think not only does that curiosity help us explore ourselves, or it helps me explore myself, but that it may inspire more genuine interactions with non-vegans, or just people who you're trying to convey peace to, because curiosity doesn't necessarily get angry. It might just get determined, and I think you can be peacefully curious in a way that doesn't throw people off their guard, or it doesn't throw people off. But it might actually allow them to let their guard down if you just come across as a peaceful and curious person. Because I sometimes, when I try to engage, I can sometimes feel like, oh, I want to make sure that I'm not shaming anybody, or I don't want to seem as if I'm being judgmental. And yeah, I feel like perhaps through curiosity, it would, in just trying to really embody curiosity, they would see that I'm really talking to them to understand them better. Because ultimately, I think that's a really big gift that all non-vegans provide vegans, is when you talk with them curiously, they're giving you all the information you need to know on what a non-vegan thinks like, if you're really willing to listen to them. And I think that's how I ought to be shifting my perspective when I'm approaching non-vegans in conversation, is what do you have to teach me about how I became vegan? Because I wasn't paying as much attention as I slowly became vegan. And so it's almost as if I've forgotten. And so I'm curious to know what transition, what dominoes occurred to get me to where I am. So that's all I have to share.
That was really cool. I like that. I'll say that it is the doorway into Siddhas because I'll say two things. One, it takes down barriers in a really respectful way. You're not crashing barriers. The barriers are just dissolving by doing that. And two, it makes me think of how an angel would teach a human about wisdom. And that would be a technique an angel would use to get a person to start to become wise. So definitely I would say it has Siddhic, intelligence in it, yes.
Can I add something
Yes,
here?
sir. Yeah, absolutely.
Evan, what you brought up sparked something for me. It's like the idea of in any conversation, you can either be in the state of learning or the state of knowing. And when you are in a state of knowing, you tend to you tend towards all of those negative things that you're trying to stay away from, because you're in that solid space where you're like you're immalleable in a sense, like, and the state of learning, with that curiosity, you're exuding that openness because you're learning. I'm imagining talking to someone about veganism, and rather than approaching it from here's what I know type of approach, and here's what you should know, asking them the fundamental questions and getting them to arrive at whatever conclusion they're going to arrive at, I feel like is such a, it's like a really, it's a I guess it involves humility in a way, because you aren't necessarily pushing an idea on someone, and you're instead allowing them to be curious with you, and like you're almost you're just like, let's be on the same level here and approach this together, and you're co-creating rather than one person being like, I'm the knowledgeable one here, this is what and it's so one-sided, and like, I know that when I talk to people like that, there's something inside of me that's like, don't listen to this person. You like, this person claims to know something, and deep down inside, I know that I don't know anything, and how do I trust or I don't know all those. Does that kind of, does what I'm saying make sense? Like,
Yeah, no, I totally connect to you on that. And I know that something that I kind of come up against is this conflict of part of me recognizing people need to decide to change themselves. I can't make anybody change, but then also feeling this responsibility to communicate about veganism, because it's just something that I think if people knew it how I knew it, they would be glad to know it, and that's a weird thing to communicate to people. And also I know initially, like, when I was first exploring veganism, and I felt like I was like, this seems pretty right, but I hadn't quite hit that like home run emotional feeling with veganism. I was kind of actually like disinterested in talking to people about it because I didn't want anyone to prove that I shouldn't be vegan, because I was like, this sounds good. I like how this sounds. Please don't give me any evidence to the contrary. But now I feel like my exploration into veganism has kind of like refined to this really solid, like little stone or gem that I'm like, yeah, this is my veganism. Like this is solid. Like, so now I'm not as scared. Like when I go into a conversation, I feel I'm at that point where I can start really entertaining the other person's concepts and really stepping into their shoes, because I know that whatever goes on there is only learning that's going to further help me understand what surrounds this gem, or what's out there to that doesn't understand it or see it as I do. Because now it's like I feel like I see it, and before it's like I kind of just knew it was out there. Yeah.
That was really profound, Evan. I liked the gem part there. That exquisite imperturbableness now you are within the veganism. That's totally that's solid gold in terms of Siddha stuff. That anything in you that has become like that, that's positive, is evidence of what it really means, what a Siddha is. And another thing it brought up that we've all been kind of talking around, but now I'm going to bring it out into light, is the Siddha is the place where you get to play with the opposites too. They're no longer antagonistic. They're complementary, because that's what you do in a Siddha is you embody the third force, and the third force is what allows the two forces to work together and create things. But it's not just the positive and negative of electricity which destroys something. It's the neutral current of witnessing from a Siddha space of deep meditation, the yes and the no of something, or the front and the back. It doesn't have to be yes and no like that, opposite. It can be high and low, or left and right, or male and female, or veganism and non-veganism, and open and closed. And you can start to play with it. I'm keeping it very universally vague in a way, because I want to keep it way open. I don't want to, because that's where it's coming from. Don't want to put that down into too tight of an example, because it's easy to get that one confused when I'm saying something about two opposites and they're playing together in a Siddha field. I want to keep that way open right now, because that does take some finesse consciousness-wise to integrate in a way that'll be useful. It's kind of it's a tricky concept, even though I'm just talking very ordinary English. It's not really difficult, but it's taken me years and years and years, and I'm still learning. That's why I love doing things like Tai Chi and stuff, because it's all about that in movement. It's all about taking that third force, which is your movement, and then constantly, your left foot and your right arm balancing, and the other, and then your head with the ground, and then your front with your back, and and how much you twist this way with how much you twist the other way. It's all happening through your movement and your breathing, and then your energy spaces you're going through, and then slowly it starts to translate into how things move in life. And just like through music, you can see all of life through music, or through Tai Chi movement, or anything. Once you master it, you can start to see how to, especially music's an easy one, because you got music of the spheres and all that stuff Pythagoras talked about, which is really cool stuff. And the martial art field and movement is a little more narrow, but there's been enough of guys that were good enough at that for me to learn how to take movement patterns and start to, like, movements of universes and molecules and wind patterns and water flows and how birds move in flocks and things like that, and start to slowly see how it connects. That's another way to check into Siddhas too, is by what you do in your art and how that reflects nature in different ways, or actually allows you to stack up and then move over and stack down into another profession, and see how that cross translates and how it compares up and down, if you know what I mean. Going meta, in other words, and then lateral shifting, and then going back, into the details. That's a fun thing to do. But time is getting on, and I want to give space to Nolan and Ray if they have anything they would like to contribute about the Siddha space. Wonderful, wonderful discussions tonight, though. Really, really creative, really neat.
I'm in kind of a noisy space at the moment.
I didn't hear that, Ray. You said you're typing?
I'm in kind of a noisy space at the moment.
Oh, okay. Well, Nolan, do you have anything you'd like to throw in about the art and knack of communicating the peaceful vibration to the planet at this point in our meeting? Because we're getting down toward the end now. If not, that's fine. I mean, we've already demonstrated the meeting is about tonight. Oh, Ray, go ahead.
Well, I did have an idea about reaching people with the message that the veganism doesn't necessarily have to be something you psych your way towards. It could be something that you relax your way towards. To start to work it into your worldview and find the things that are enjoyable about it rather than the things that are scary about it. Try removing different things from your diet and then just to seeing how life works. It's Veganuary right now, so there's a lot of people that are going to be trying it out for a month and discovering it's not as socially scary as they thought it was going to be. And I think Nolan mentioned earlier that people are honest with you and you can see they're giving you all the information if you listen. And I really emphasize that listening part, because when you listen, you discover that what's actually coming out of their mouth isn't exactly what's bothering them. And that's a common refrain in activism, that you say that you're vegan and then somebody starts spouting off strange statistics about lions, It's this kind of place that people go when they want to talk about something that they feel compelled to contribute something, but because veganism is the unknown to them, they tap into something else. And I always find the lion thing interesting because I was traumatized by those nature shows, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, back when I was a kid. And it was this kind of rite of passage to be able to watch a lion take down a gazelle and eat it, and not feel for the gazelle. So this is something like, as a boy, you realize, okay, well, once upon a time I'd have to grow up and be a hunter and be able to deal with all that kind of stuff. So I have to be able to watch this and deal with it. So I find it really interesting that later on when people talk about compassion for animals, people pull up lions as the example. We're not lions. We're not in the cat animal kingdom. Or the genus, what is it? Or cat order. We are primates, and yet we have this affinity with lions when it comes to talking about whether we eat other animals or not. And I think that it's such a common refrain that I think that there's this kind of a common desensitization that happens, this trauma that we experience, especially as young boys, that we have to be the tough ones. Our parents take us fishing, and we have to be able to put the bait on the hook, whether it's a worm or piercing a minnow through the eye. These sort of things, eventually you become desensitized to them. I grew up in a fishing family. My wife grew up in a hunting family, which is like an extra level of cultural trauma. I was involved in 4-H, but it was in an agricultural community, so it's more to do with hunting. I did take hunter training with how to handle a rifle and so forth, but most of it was about mechanics and other skills. But I know this is a common thing in agricultural communities, that 4-H is about training your kids to understand how the world works. We have to raise these animals, we have to kill them, Why? Because we have to. Somebody's got to do it, and we have to respect this cycle of slaughter. It's part of being a human. And even though many of us are generations away from that kind of an understanding, in doing outreach, I encounter a lot of European immigrants that remember their parents bringing the necks of chickens that lived in their yard. But and the case that I'm think of in particular was right next to a chicken slaughterhouse in Toronto. And I said, well, come have a look at this one and see if this looks like the old country. The chickens that you're going to this grocery store over here to buy aren't the same ones that we're looking at they are the ones that we're looking at through the slats in the truck, but they're not the ones that you'll remember from the old country. And there's that culture of desensitization that everybody kind of takes pride in, but we're a species that lives out of alignment with our values. There isn't too many people that would say nonviolence. That sounds like a terrible idea. It's culture is something that we accept but don't necessarily live out in our lives. So these are the joys that we can experience through veganism that we can get those parts of our lives that are out of alignment, what we do and what we say, how we feel and how we actually act are quite often pulled in completely different directions, and through no fault of our own. It's not something that people have to really own is something bad they've done or bad that they're doing now. It's something they just have to, untangle and recognize is in misalignment with their value system.
Well, really well said. And I just want to point this out at this stage, is that the siddha that Ray is sharing is the truth. And the truth sometimes has to point out how subtle the cultural imposition of lies is literally permeating our culture on a collective level. And that's part of what it is to get back into alignment with the truth, the real truth, which is about essence and centering, is to expose the collective lies we've been fed through all types of cultural mechanisms that are established and set up in our way of life, in our different ways of life all over the world. It's different ways of doing it. So I want to point that out too. Sometimes it's kind of intense to listen to the truth and how we've been conditioned and dumbed down and how we've been tricked and lied to and all of that. But that is definitely a siddha, and I'm saying it for the general populace too that may see this video later. Not all siddhas are light and love and yippee and yahoo. Some of them bring you full stop and make you have to take a look at the real truth on a collective level and that's why it's a siddha, because it's a benefit to the collective to get this kind of understanding and to get this kind of illumination and exposure of what's really going on, and how you can lead yourself out of it and get out of that mess and get out of that and stop drinking from that poisoned well that the village is drinking from, and go over to where the clean well is and get your head clear again and get your life back in line with your heart again. So I think that's beautiful. Sometimes, yeah, but like I say, sometimes siddhas just make you shut up and go, whoa, okay. Like I say, they're not all light and love. So that was beautiful, Ray. I loved your discourse there and what you were sharing. It's also very informative on a really savvy and intelligent way about cultural conditioning. So thank you. And now I would like to ask if Nolan, if you have anything else to contribute, because we're just about.
Dharmendra, you're muted.
That's funny. Yeah, no, I was just inviting Nolan if he had anything else to say, because we've gone about 2 hours, and I want to kind of bring it to, I kind of want to stay within the parameters now as best as possible, because we started about exactly 2 hours ago. So Nolan, if you're there you are. Okay.
Yeah, all I want to say is thank you. Thank everyone for thank all of you for being here, because it's awesome. And yeah, that's about it.
That was a really beautiful little note of celebration there, which is also a sit-down. So I think we'll bring it to a close at this point. I'd like to ask Ray to stay on after I pause the recording, because I have to just say something real quick to you. And and anybody else can stay on too, but I'm going to now officially stop the recording at about 2 hours and 2 minutes here. So bye out everybody out there in watching land.